Hello everybody, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and today I would like to share my final thoughts on the QYGMGS Premium Folding Knife. This is a brand that, as far as I know, only does sales through Amazon. I don't believe they have an actual website or sale to the more commonly known EDC gear retailers like Blade HQ, Knife Center, DLT Trading, companies like that, or excuse me, websites like that. So you can currently get this from Amazon. At the recording of this video, it says that there's only 15 left in stock, but they have since restocked in the past. Like when I got this, a couple weeks back, they had a bunch sold out and they restocked. Now they're selling it again. So it seems like they're actually doing pretty decent for themselves. This knife comes in at $147, and it's honestly not that bad. And I mean that in a good way. I don't mean that in like a snooty kind of way. This is a company that is very, very young, very, very small. They're producing knives out of Yangchang, China, and there was one other knife that I did purchase. It was basically the budget version of what this is, and I loved it. You guys can go back and see my review on that one over there. I don't believe it had an actual like model name, but it was essentially this same thing. The main differences were, instead of it being a titanium frame lock, it was actually a liner lock, and it had like G10 carbon fiber scales, a wire pocket clip, and D2 blade material. This one has a beautifully sculpted milled titanium pocket clip, which is pretty cool. It looks like it's like really, really bent like that, but that's just the way that it's sculpted. And this right here are the only markings on the entire knife, and I actually really do enjoy that because I don't care to have all this crazy billboarding on my knives. Let me know if you guys mind it, if you like to have a little bit here and there, but I think that's a pretty good spot. It's also not like blacked out. It's like super like faded looking, and I haven't been carrying this too much, so it's not gonna be like rubbed off or anything. But yeah, that's it. QYGMGS. As I stated in my video of my budget version of this one, kind of wish they would make a catchier name versus that, because it doesn't make sense. I don't believe it stands for anything. It's kind of weird, but regardless, that's not really important. What's important is the quality of this knife, and I will say that it's pretty darn good. So here we have M390 blade material, and they emphasize all over the description of this knife, real M390. And I just think it's kind of funny that they have to say this so many times, and it would make somebody who isn't willing to take the financial leap into thinking that it's just one of those companies that's just like, it's saying that it's real, but it's actually not. Or maybe it is, but it's heat treated to shit. And I will confidently say that it's actually heat treated quite well. So I have a handful of other M390 blades in my collection, and this feels quite the same in sharpening and everything. So it takes a wonderful edge. The quality of the edge when I first got it, it wasn't anything impressive, but I was actually able to put a rather nice edge on there. I believe it was at like 20 degrees, and I went up to all the way as far as I can go. I went to like 1,000 grit, and then up to 0.5 microns with my strops. So just to get a crazy polish on this thing. I'm sure you guys know that if you have a super high polish, it's not gonna have the best edge retention. It's gonna dull a lot faster, but I just wanted to see how well it'll actually like polish up, and it actually did quite nicely. So let's get into a couple of the dimensions that they provided here. I honestly don't really trust Amazon's dimensions and things like that. So I will be pulling up a bunch of other very common size comparison knives, but it says that the weight of this item is 3 ounces overall. I will say that it's very lightweight. It is a medium to small knife. And then it says here the overall length is 6.97. Country of origin, China. M390 blade material, silver, titanium. M390 again. Foldable for adults. Camping, fishing, unpacking, peeling fruit. And that's really it. So besides all that, here we have the Demco Knives 80-20.5. So it is close, not too close. Civivi Elementum, also pretty darn close. They made this thing in overall dimensions that what I think we really pleasing to a lot of people. It's not big, but it's not too small. The design overall isn't too cumbersome to work around, to get used to. Here's the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. So it's definitely a whole lot closer to the Para 3 right here, so you guys can see. Still, I believe that the Para 3 is going to be a little bit more comfortable than this, just because while this does fit my hand quite well, I'm able to get full grip. I can't comfortably or safely choke up on that because of this point right here does come in contact with my finger. So it's not too great, but it's all right. It's just not meant to be. Last two little size comparisons I got for you guys are my Benchmade Osborne 940, which definitely has a whole lot more cutting length, but around the same handle length, and the Benchmade Bug Out. So here we got pretty much the same exact cutting edge length as the Bug Out, but the Bug Out does have a little bit, just a little bit more handle length on it, not by a whole lot. Thickness will do up against the PM2 right here, which is pretty much gonna be the same as a Para 3, and it is yeah, it looks like it's right on the dot. So this shouldn't be, it's not a bulky item. It feels like it's actually really well made and well proportioned in all dimensions, honestly. Let's get into hardware. So this you guys are going to love for sure, because you're only going to see this on knives that are made by individuals and designed by people in the community, or really higher end production knives. This can all be taken apart with a T8. T8. It's on both sides. Wish it was on just the back side. No big deal. All right. T8. The one pocket clip screw is a T8 and it's squared, so it's not going to spin or anything. There's actually a little space milled out that it sets itself in a little bit. T8. Even the lock bar insert that also acts as an over travel stop is also a T8, which is pretty darn nice. Access to the frame lock here, it is wonderful. Zero lock stick. There is zero play in all directions. This thing is solid. I've taken it apart. Seems very well finished on the inside as it is on the outside. There are all these little decorative lines out here and over here. It just has a lot of little lines to it, and I actually do enjoy it quite a bit. So, and I love this clip. I think this clip has a little too many like softer scallops on it, and it doesn't really fit the overall design of this, because this knife is very sharp and angular looking. And while this clip is nice, I think that maybe something that was a little bit more on the lines that would actually like fit this overall design, I think that would be a little bit better. But it goes in and out of the pocket really well. The only thing is that it is tight, and I have noticed that after carrying this for a little bit that there is now the slightest gap guys can see that there is a slightest gap between the actual scale and the pocket clip. So it does that. So there's a little bit of space. I do think that my common pant material that I typically wear, like Dickies and jeans, I think that it might stretch it out a little bit, but not that big of a deal. There are a couple deployment methods. So here we have flipper. It has 0 jimping on it. I think it would have benefited, and honestly you could have fit 2 nice jimps on there, even one on this little flat spot on the end, but it is still very low profile. It's not really in the way. You could chop it, just don't remove too much material, because that is where it contacts the stop pin back here, which is pretty healthy sized in my opinion. See that back there? So there's that. There is your lockup right in there. There is no internal milling, but it is very thin overall, so I don't really think it needs it. If it had it and it stayed at that price, I would say that's actually kind of impressive. So, but it's fine that it doesn't. Other deployment method is you have this hole that you can get at reverse flick, which is my favorite, and it just makes such a wonderful sound. It really does. And if you get it just right, it just has this this ting reverberation. It just sounds like metal clanking against each other, because well, that's kind of what it's doing. So, and a little bit of extra sound actually comes from the space between the frame lock and the clip. It's just loud. It's just very snappy, and it's something that I actually enjoy. You can get it with your thumb. It's just a little bit more challenging because it is a frame lock, and at least for me, I rest my fingers on the rather large flat clip, and I'm able to not lock myself out to get at the hole in the front with my thumb, as I fail it multiple times. But reverse flick and flipper is my favorite. I would actually recommend just to chop the flipper tab. I don't think it's worth keeping on it. The reverse flick, that's where it's at with this design, and I think that by getting rid of this little flipper tab, it'll be a much more uniform design for sure, and you might even be able to get a full finger choil right there. There is jimping that goes up just like half an inch. It's really nothing impressive. It really should have spanned the whole length going over the actual hole, but that's all right. It does add meaningful traction when you're gripping it in where it's intended to be, at least where my thumb lands comfortably, either up here by the tip of my thumb or a little bit further back if I want to push down a little bit more. It is a very comfortable knife overall, definitely. The hole, it is finished quite well. It might be finished a little too well, actually. I would prefer it being a little bit more grabby. It does have this decorative, non-functioning groove right up here. It's just for aesthetic purposes. I haven't noticed any material being caught up in there when I'm using this knife, and it is pretty much overall flat ground. It's not hollow or anything like that. Relatively standard blade stock material, and it comes down to a rather good edge actually. Actual cardboard here. Let's just see how it does. Wonderful. It does exactly what it needs to do. So it cuts for sure. I don't feel any unnecessary resistance, and it's great. And I know because I did put a polish on this, that what it just did with hardly any resistance going through standard cardboard. It won't last forever for sure, but my next sharpening on this is definitely going to be at a much lower grit, but I'll still try to strop it up because I believe in stropping. Some people don't. I do. So yeah, there's that. There's really not a whole lot left to talk about. Couple little nitpicky things. I got three nitpicky things. It is not the end of the world. So And I say that because I have another knife in my collection that is a keeper and it has the same problem. This has some pretty sucky detent lash right here. If you guys can see that. So I'm holding the frame scales and I'm pulling the blade without actually having it released from its detent ball. Yeah, that's about the same amount of movement I have in my QSP Penguin. That one was actually a premium Penguin, and I still love that knife for sure. So if I'm willing to put up with it for that knife, and that one was $100, but that one was a steal for sure. This one, it being a little bit more, I'm only saying that this is justified because this is a smaller company, and I think that if this knife was produced by, let's say, I think that it would have been around the $110, maybe $100 range, right? That's in my opinion, because you know that's such a large company, and like this would be no problem for them. You know, they would definitely not have that little detent lash problem. These sharp edges right up here, and that's on the actual, you know, scale material. That's sharp. That's pretty sharp right there. I don't know if I can actually like scrape cardboard with it, but yeah, I mean, I could definitely. Yeah, it's pretty rough. So that you could easily just, you know, take a little bit of sandpaper to it, but then you would also ruin the rather consistent and pretty nice bead blush finish that is you know, on these titanium scales. So I think this would be a good knife to do some practice work on, with a little bit of sanding, maybe some anodization. I think that'd be pretty cool. This is a titanium alloy. I'm not sure what grade it is, but it is definitely a lower grade of titanium. It still looks nice. It's still extremely lightweight, and it feels great in the hand, for sure. So yeah, the nitpicky thing was detent lash, couple little sharp edges. It was mainly these two right here, and maybe up here, going downwards. Yeah, it's just a little sharp. But overall, I think this is actually a really wonderful design, and a knife that I would recommend, with keeping in mind a couple of those little, you know, things that I mentioned, that it can be a little sharp right there and up here. There's spots that you're not really going to be interacting with too often, for sure. And yeah, I don't have much more to say about this thing. Anything else would just be more good stuff to say about it. I think it's worth the money, you know, floating just underneath $150. I think it's worth it. Go check it out while they're still available and still in production. I will be linking it down in my description. Thank you guys so much, and I appreciate you as always. Have a wonderful rest of your day.